The 1950s was a very good decade for the companies that made infant formula. Doctors loved it, and most mothers were feeding it to their babies. Then along came a group of housewives from West Suburban Franklin Park who started an international revolution in the way babies are fed. They called themselves Leche League, and they had their first meeting 50 years ago this week. John Calloway has the story.
It's a Friday morning in Mary Lee Young's Northside bungalow.
Do you want some water or some tea?
The aroma of apple cake is in the air as new mothers and mothers-to-be arrive for a meeting of the Lincoln Park chapter of La Leche League.
I wanted to start off by seeing if anyone had any questions.
The purpose of this meeting is the same as the first La Leche meeting in October of 1956, to help women who want to breastfeed their babies.
It's the perfect food for a child. Why would we want to give our babies anything less than that which we know is perfect? And it's here, it's right here.
Edwina Freilich knows a thing or two about breastfeeding. In 1956, she was one of 7 suburban Chicago women who founded La Leche League.
I was in my 30s when I had my first baby. And one doctor said, breastfeed? After 30? No woman has any milk in her breast after 30.
Edwina did find a supportive doctor and breastfed that baby. But in the mid-50s, only about 20% of U.S. babies were breastfed. Nursing rates had dropped sharply after World War II with the wider availability of infant formula.
It was more than just the formula, it was the whole thing. It was the doctors who didn't know beans about it. It was hospitals.
Mary White is another of La Leche League's founding mothers. She says that the low breastfeeding rates in the 50s also had to do with the way babies were born.
Because I know with my first one, I had the shots, the pills, the gas, knock them out, came to later on, and I remember seeing a nurse standing in the doorway holding a baby. Here's your baby, don't you want to see him? And all I thought was, how can you nurse a baby when you can't even hold him or recognize him or love him?
The La Leche founders were all breastfeeding mothers, and most were part of the same parish in West Suburban Franklin Park. The idea for this international organization came at a very local event.
It was a church picnic in Elmhurst at Wilder Park. Mary and I were there with our families and other church people. I had 4 children at the time. Mary had 7, I think, or 6.
As Mary and Marion nursed their babies at the picnic, other women from the church approached them and described their frustration at not being able to breastfeed their own kids.
It just struck me, and Mary too, I'm sure, as unfair that women who wanted to do the very best for their babies couldn't get any help.
So along with several other breastfeeding friends, Mary and Marion held a meeting for women who wanted to breastfeed.
We weren't going to be organized as an international organization. We were going to be helping our friends, the people in our community.
Most moms do find that breastfeeding is easier the second time around, just because they have more confidence. The milk ducts are already there, the milk usually comes in sooner.
This can only be done mother to mother. This was at the heart of the whole thing, because you learn more sitting watching another woman interact with her baby. It isn't just black and white, let's see, thing number 1, thing number 2, and so on and so forth. You can see how natural it was and how loving it was.
It gives you confidence as a mother that you didn't have before. I mean, before, when everybody was on formula, the doctor was really the one in total charge of that baby, because he's the one that was in charge of the feeding of the baby. And that's the biggest part.
But for a group of suburban housewives to challenge the prevailing medical establishment and instill confidence in other mothers, they needed medical support, and they found it nearby. Mary White's husband, Greg, was a family doctor and a strong advocate of breastfeeding.
He was just invaluable in getting the Leche League off and keeping us going, because he was the medical source of information that we needed.
Some of the doctors said, what is the matter with Dr. White? He's going back to the horse and buggy days, you know, breastfeeding. we have a formula.
In fact, it was Dr. White who suggested the name La Leche League based on a Spanish shrine in Florida.
It's a little statue of Mary breastfeeding the Christ child, and the entire title is Our Lady of Happy Delivery and Plentiful Milk, and milk is the La Leche. Back in the 50s, you weren't allowed to have the word breast in print, and we couldn't put meeting notices that said anything about breastfeeding.
As word spread about La Leche League, mothers from around the country turned to the group for advice and support.
And they started to write to us and ask, what should I do about this and what can I do about that? And we'd write every mother back a personal letter. And after a while, we thought, oh my gosh, we're answering the same questions over and over again. Let's put it all down.
In 1958, those letters evolved into a loose-leaf manual they called The Womanly Art of Breastfeeding. It sold 17,000 copies in 5 years. Soon there were La Leche groups sprouting up all around North America. In 1963, the first hardcover edition of The Womanly Art of Breastfeeding got an unexpected boost.
The month that came from the printer, Reader's Digest came out with They Teach the Joys of Breastfeeding. It was all about La Leche League. And within 2 months, those 10,000 copies were gone.
In the early days, every La Leche newsletter included an offer that doctors couldn't match.
We also encouraged women to call us by phone any time of the day or night, because we knew what it was like in the middle of the night when you wonder, is your baby getting enough, or how do I know if my milk is good enough? That's sort of a crucial time for many women when they might turn to a bottle, because you don't want to call the doctor.
By the early 70s, La Leche League had groups in every state and several countries, and breastfeeding rates were climbing steadily.
And welcome Her Serene Highness, Princess Grace of Monaco.
Perhaps their most glamorous endorsement came in 1971, when Princess Grace spoke at their convention.
As a young woman of today, as modern as any, I believe, married with a husband and in normal expectation of a family, I had never considered anything else but breastfeeding when I should have children.
She had interviews in Vogue magazine. She would talk about La Leche League. She gave us an enormous amount of credibility.
You who have done and are doing such magnificent work without fear or favor in aid of the health and happiness of mother and child. Thank you very much.
La Leche League has had its critics. To this day, some feel that they're too radical in promoting breastfeeding in older children.
We have never been militant about anything as an organization. Oftentimes a woman will come to La Leche expecting to breastfeed her baby maybe just 6 months, and then once she's into the experience and sees how good it's for her baby, and she's willing to go along longer.
Others believe that La Leche is not supportive enough of working women.
That was, I think, one of the points of contention maybe among leaders in the beginning, because those of us who started the league, and most of the leaders, were not women who were employed outside of the home after their children were born. So we came at that from different places. Some people felt we shouldn't even help women who were employed outside the home. But our feeling always was we were there to help every mother who wanted to breastfeed, regardless of her circumstances.
Today, there are roughly 3,000 La Leche groups in 67 countries, all of which can trace their lineage back to 1956 and 7 women in Franklin Park.
It wasn't just the founding mothers. Wow. It's all these other mothers out there who feel this from their heart. You don't have to sell it to them like a new product that, well, you know, I never heard of this before and maybe it isn't any good, but I'll try it. It's in their whole being that they want to do it. So you don't have to go out and peddle it to anybody. And they pick up and carry the ball, and that's the reason it's grown so big. It isn't just us, the 7 of us, you know?
For Chicago Tonight, this is John Calloway.
When La Leche League was founded 50 years ago this week, only 20% of U.S. babies were breastfed at birth. Last year, it was up to 71%. And by the way, those 7 founding mothers of La Leche, They all continue to be active in the organization.